Okay, today we're going to be doing a health check on Hermann's tortoise. The first thing you do with them is you weigh them. You do this by you take a cup or a can, you put it face down onto the scales, reset your scales. You then pick the tortoise up, you use your thumbs on the top with the remaining fingers interlaced on the bottom of the plastron to give them support. Then you place them on top of the cup so that they can't move. So her weight is 900 grams, which is in keeping with the normal weight. Tortoises weigh anywhere up to 3.6 kilograms, but most of them, as with Margaret, you can see they weigh a lot less. So you start with a health check from the head and you work backwards over the animal's body. This is to prevent cross-contamination from feces around the face. So you start with the eyes and you're looking for them to not be sunken, for them to be black and bright with no discharge, no swelling, no redness. If any of these are present, it's indicative of an infection. It can also be caused by environmental issues like too much dust in the air. You then move down to the nose. Tortoises have two nostrils, so you need to check that they're nice and clear, they're free from debris, there's no discharge, that they aren't blowing bubbles. If there are bubbles present in a tortoise's nostrils, it's usually indicative of an upper respiratory infection, which in tortoises can be incredibly dangerous as they do not have a muscular diaphragm and therefore cannot cough. So then you move on to the mouth. Tortoises don't have a mouth like other reptiles and mammals. They have a beak which is made out of keratin, which is much more like a bird than anything else. You are looking for no splits, no cracks, no discharge. If there's signs of these, not only can it impede their ability to eat, but it may also be an indication of stomitis, which is commonly known as mouth rot. Now with tortoises, you can't check the temperature, pulse and respiration like you can with most animals, as tortoises only actually breathe 4 times a minute. To check their pulse, you need a special piece of equipment which isn't available at Hoffel Animal Unit. And temperature-wise, you check from the ambient temperature as the ectotherms, so they take their heat from external sources. In the wild, they take it from the sun. In captivity, they take it from a full spectrum heat lamp, which puts out not only visible light for food recognition and normal behaviours, but UV lights, which are important for the absorption of calcium and vitamin D3. So then we move on to the feet and the legs. Now, tortoises don't have scales like other reptiles, and nor do they shed the same. They shed more like humans do, 1 cell at a time. A common misconception about tortoises is that they shed the whole shell to create a new one. However, what they do is they lose scutes from the bottom upwards, and that is how they regrow. And therefore the lines on a tortoise shell are a very good indication of their age. So the tortoise's shell is made up of 2 parts. You have the carapace on the top, and on the underneath you have the plastron. They're held together by basically bone and horny scutes. And inside of this they hold all their internal organs. They have specially adapted vertebrae, shoulder blades and pelvis, which are all fused to the ribs and to the top part of the shell, the carapace. They have 4 claws on each foot, again made of keratin, and they have specially adapted feet known as elephantine feet, which are specially adapted for digging in their natural environment. They do this because they lay their eggs underground to protect them from predators, and also they dig to hibernate to escape the cold. Now the respiratory system again is very unique to the tortoise. They breathe via movement. They have specially adapted muscles attached to the rib cage which pump the air in and out of the lungs. In stressful situations, they pump the legs to create more oxygen, which helps in aerobic respiration. However, because of this, they do tire very easily after extreme exercise. Another adaptation with tortoises is they only have a 3-chambered heart, so they have the left and right atrium, but only a single ventricle, which has begun to adapt a muscular septum to divide it into 2. Again, because of this, they tire very easily. So the cloaca is where all the excretions and waste come from, and also in females, they lay their eggs out of it. You're looking to check that there's no discharge, no swelling, no feces around the cloaca. Any of these present can be again indicative of an infection, or it can be down to an incorrect diet. As tortoises do not need a lot of sugar in the diet, this can cause diarrhea, which again is dangerous as they're not absorbing the nutrients. Right, so this is Shelley. Shelley came to the animal unit here at Hoffel in 2013, so not a lot known about her history. Again, we're going to weigh her by popping her on top of the cup on the scales. And at the moment she is 1.1 kilos, which according to her health weight records is indicative of what she normally is. She's lost no weight, she's gained no weight. So with Shelley, in comparison to Margaret, Shelley has some growth issues. So on her shell, as you can see, she's got something known as pyramiding. This is where different parts of the shell grow at different rates and grow unevenly. Now for a captive tortoise, this isn't too much of an issue. However, in the wild, it would be dangerous for the survival, as they would not be hidden from predators in the way that smooth-shelled tortoises are. This can be caused by feeding the incorrect diet to young tortoises, whereby animal proteins fed to them, and as the herbivores, this makes them grow incorrectly. There's been studies done into the fact that it could be something to do with hydration in young hatchlings as well, and unfortunately it's irreversible. However, it can be managed so as not to become a worse problem, like I say, through diet and through the correct temperature. Now, tortoises, for their normal heat during the day, it's between 30 and 33 degrees, with an evening and downtime being between 21 and 23 degrees. Within their enclosure, you also have to provide a basking spot, which is anywhere between 38 and 45 degrees. They don't need added humidity, as the ambient humidity is more than enough for them. The other thing we need to look at with Shelley is with her beak. Again, in comparison to Margaret, she does have a problem with malocclusion. Now this could be an old injury, or it could be from incorrect feeding when she was younger. However, this can be managed. It can be done via trimming and grinding down the beak to reshape it, which makes the welfare of the tortoise improve overall, as it can eat easier. So the differences between female and male tortoises is not only the size, with the females being much bigger, but they also have very different tails. As you can see with Shelley, she's got a small V-shaped tail with very little spur on the end. So this is Sheldon. Sheldon is a male tortoise. Again, he arrived at Animal Hoffel Unit in 2008. He's very active today because it's nice and warm in the unit. Now, as you can see, compared to Margaret and Shelley, he is much smaller, shorter, and he weighs a lot less. He has been weighed and he weighs 660 grams, which shows that he hasn't put weight on, and nor has he lost anything. The only other difference between male and female Hermann's tortoises is, as I stated before, their tail. As you can see with him, it's much longer, narrower, and on the end it has a bony spur, so they have concave divots on the bottom of the plastron. This is to help with ease of mating, as obviously a female's shell is round, and with that being concave, they can fit better together. Now on males, the testes and penis are held up inside the abdominal cavity and exit the cloaca when mating. The diet for Hermann's tortoise, you need to avoid high sugar foods like fruits. If you feed vegetables, vegetables must be fed raw. The bulk of the diet should be made up with dark leafy greens such as kale, as they need high fibre, low protein, low fat, and plenty of calcium for vitamin D3 absorption. The importance of calcium and vitamin D3 in a tortoise's diet, as well as feeding the correct foods, is for the prevention of metabolic bone disease. Metabolic bone disease is caused by a lack of calcium in the diet. If too little is fed, they can take stored calcium out of the bones for absorption, which can lead to brittle bones, which causes fractures. It can cause shell deformities on the carapace. Species of plants that can be fed and should form the main part of the diet include kale, spring greens, ice plants. You can feed buddleia, young raspberry leaves, campanulas, dandelions, chickweed. But you also have to make sure it's varied, as too much of one food can damage internal organs such as the liver. In captivity, a vitamin and mineral supplement should be added to the food 2 to 3 times a week, as well as a calcium powder on the food daily. As well as this, added to their enclosure should be cuttlefish bones, because not only does this provide a good source of calcium, but it also allows for the maintenance of the beak, ensuring that it doesn't become too long and therefore impede their eating. With the digestion, If they've stopped eating, it can be caused by many things, but in particular, if it becomes too cold, digestion ceases working altogether. It can also, in gravid females, cause demineralised eggs, therefore the eggs and the offspring would not be viable. As well as this, if it becomes too much of a problem, it can cause seizures and eventually death. Other disorders and diseases that cause problems within tortoises include runny nose syndrome, parasites and stomitis, also known as mouth rot. If any of these are present in your tortoise and they share an environment with other tortoises, they must be isolated as they're infectious. There are also several types of herpesvirus that have been identified to cause disease in tortoises, and signs can include stomitis, which is swelling of the mouth and tongue. It can also cause conjunctivitis, which is swelling of the eye. It can cause encephalitis, which is brain swelling. And it can also cause hepatitis in tortoises. Again, these things should be monitored closely to prevent them from happening. Prevention's usually maintained by good husbandry, correct lighting, heat and humidity levels.